Professor John Mearsheimer, who I've been trying to get on this show for quite a long time. So, Professor, if you do hear this, we would love to have you. Personal hero and inspiration of mine, joined Piers Morgan for an interview. And there was a clash of ideologies like one that you've never seen. Here you basically see liberal neoconservatism personified in Piers Morgan versus John Mearsheimer with utter realism. And you tell me which comports more with reality. Let's take a listen.
You want to remember that if you look at what's happening in the conventional war, it looks like Putin's going to win, despite the fact that we've now passed this large-scale arms package for Ukraine. Putin is likely to win.
Why is that not a terrible thing for America and the West?
Because you have to prioritize the threats that you face in the world. And the fact of the matter is that what happens in Ukraine does not matter that much to the United States. I know for people like you, this is a life and death matter. The thought of any country on the planet that the West defends losing is a major defeat and has catastrophic consequences. I mean, you felt this way about us pulling out of Afghanistan. But I think that places like Afghanistan, even places like Ukraine, don't matter that much.
Actually, on that, I didn't really. I felt with Afghanistan, America should have kept a small military presence there to maintain some kind of order. And I think I was justified in saying that, given what's happened since. I thought throwing the country back to the Taliban was a catastrophic error of judgment, and it wouldn't have happened in the way it's happened if America kept a couple of thousand troops there, as it does all around the world in endless bases. So it seemed to me, having done many, many years of hard work in Afghanistan as a response to 9/11, to then simply just overnight throw everybody out and leave the country to the Taliban, particularly for women's rights, never mind anything else, I thought was an abrogation of America's duty and the UK.
Right, but this is your worldview, which is the United States has a responsibility to be everywhere and
not
to
everywhere,
never quit until
but they should
wins.
certainly be preserving freedom and democracy. Otherwise, why self-style yourself as leader of the free world? You either are leader of the free world, and America still has, I think, half the world's military firepower, and obviously one of the biggest economies. You either are that entity, leader of the free world, or you're not. And if you are, then what comes with that is a responsibility to protect freedom and democracy when it comes under attack from totalitarian regimes, I would think.
I think if you look at the history of American foreign policy, it's very hard to make the case that our principal goal has been to protect freedom and democracy. The United States has a rich history of overthrowing democracies around the world, and we have a rich history of siding with some of the world's biggest dictators. So this idea that we're out there protecting freedom and democracy and it's our principal goal, in my opinion, doesn't mesh with reality.
Very diplomatically said.
I love him so much. He is such an OG. He's been on it for years. You guys should read his books and his interviews. He's an incredible person. But what he does so effectively there is watch it with Piers on Afghanistan, right? He's like, you want to stay there forever. He's like, I didn't say that. I just thought we should stay a couple of thousand troops to protect women's rights.
Forever.
Forever. Right? So what's that? And I just love, he's like, well, the fact is that what happened in Ukraine doesn't matter very much to the United States. And this is the thing that what John gets at the most is that this can sound cold-blooded, but in practice, it's more moral. Because when you don't cast yourself as the freedom and democracy defender and all of that, and you make choices that are actually in your interest in the long run, then you don't end up meddling in other countries and creating a goddamn mess that for the people that are actually over there. Or like this Israel, thing, for example. Would any of this even have happened if America wasn't the total guarantor of Israel's security? Never in a million years. Not a chance. Because they would get checked by the Arab powers. Now, same in Ukraine and Russia. Would there really be this invasion? I already know the comment brigade is coming for me on this one, but I'll argue till I'm blue in the face that NATO expansion in the 1990s was a horrific disaster for the United States to encroach all the way up to all these Baltic states, which are utterly useless to American security. And then even just yesterday, Krystal, the U.S. ambassador to NATO said Ukraine will be a part of NATO. The U.S. ambassador is out there saying
but even if you don't accept that.
Yeah.
right? Even if you look at Putin's rhetoric and you're like, listen, he's an imperialist, he wants to conquer territory.
He certainly is.
Okay, you know, even if you think that, without our intervention, I think it's 90% likely there would have been a deal at the beginning, because the Ukrainians would have looked at this and like, we have no chance here. We have to settle. Like, it's not ideal, but we have to settle, and we're gonna have to give some things up, and it is what it is. And you wouldn't have, you know, again, a war on men, of generation at least of Ukrainian men who've been sent to the slaughter, and, you know, horrors unfolding there, and they were dragged into it by us. So, you know, you and I have a different view of the world. I would like us to actually like stand up for the values we pretend to, but to actually look at American history and think that we do, it's precious, right? It's precious to still hold on to that view. We literally we arm 73% of the world's dictatorships. And you're like, freedom and democracy. Even in Afghanistan, like the women's rights. I support women's rights, yeah? But then we've got our buddies, Saudi Arabia.
Yes, that's
not exactly like feminist icons over here, and we're happy to fund them. We're talking about, you know, Biden's like obsessed with this pipe dream of normalization, and we're going to provide them with security guarantees in exchange for them normalizing relations with Israel. Like, get out of here with your idea that we're protecting freedom and democracy around the world. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's just utterly preposterous. It's never been more preposterous than it is right now when you see what we're enabling and encouraging and funding and supplying the Israelis to do to the Palestinians in direct contravention of the international law that we pretended to support when it came to Russia.
That's part of what I'm saying. That's why I won't even want to pretend anymore. I'll be like, America does what's good for America. You know why we care about Saudi Arabia and we deal with these barbarians is because we want oil. That's it, period. That's, you know, let's all be honest. Qatar, same deal. Natural gas, it's the second amount of natural gas. We're going to do trade with you, period, end of story. Let's just stop, because that's what opens up the gateway to, oh, now we got to deploy U.S. military assets to dive so that so that girls in Kabul can go to school. Ridiculous. I mean, it's just, this is exactly what drove me crazy about the entire thing. When you don't pretend, as I said, it leads to better outcomes. I mean, look at what happened in Afghanistan. We prop people up and then it fell down. We wasted $100 billion. Ask the Afghan people if it worked out for them. It's been a terrible outcome. It would have been better if we left them to sort it out for themselves.
Absolutely.
And same with the Israelis. If the Israelis actually have to deal with this Jewish homeland, you know, post-1978, that they have to defend against the Arabs, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to have diplomacy with your neighbors. Now, everyone says that that's completely impossible. People can deal with anything, even when they hate each other. Yes, sometimes it will lead to war, but the instinct of survival, whenever you have two relatively equal, you know, military powers, look at the Egyptians and the Israelis. It's lasted for decades. They're not stupid. Yeah, they don't like each other necessarily, but they're like, look, we don't want to kill each other anymore. It's all good. Shake hands, and we'll just divide this thing up. That's a model for how actual balance works. So this is my case for Professor Mearsheimer's view of the world. It's considered amoral, but I actually really believe it leads to a more stable international system. So anyway, I really enjoyed the interview. I encourage people to go and to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very revealing and interesting exchange. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.